Lying about molest. Preventing and responding to false accusations of sex crimes. Lesson 6. If your case goes to trial. Notes for this lesson are posted at shunketsu.wordpress.com. You can look up the URL given on the slide before you. You are finally out of the lockup. What time is it again? You wonder, looking at your watch to try and come to terms with how much time passed while you were detained, interrogated, and then brought before a judge to have the charges filed against you. You asserted your innocence, claimed trial, and have been released on bail, and you're heading back home to see your family and catch up with some sleep. Your phone battery somehow went flat while you were detained, and you cannot check it for messages while you're on the way home. But that's also a relief. For the next few hours, you don't want to be flooded with text messages from all over the place, but you want to clear your mind and get a grasp on the path ahead. And that's where I come in. This season, when you are under investigation and you know there's a chance that you will have to go to court over the false accusation made against you, is often a time of great oppression and uncertainty. A lot of that comes from the unknown. You've never been investigated for any criminal accusations before. And if you spent your life as a decent, law-abiding citizen who tried your best to stay out of trouble, being maliciously accused of a crime you did not commit hits even harder. Now, I'm here to not only give you a sense of what to expect, but also my advice on how to best prepare for what lies ahead. So, in lesson 1, I pointed out that a 182 woman is trying to use the Singapore police force, the courts, and society at large to ruin your life. The false accusations of molest, of outrage of modesty, can lead to being arrested and detained, your career being stalled, put on hold, or even destroyed, family relationships damaged or destroyed, your reputation in society being ruined, legal fees. Dr. Yoso Nam paid $600,000 in legal fees over 4 years. Jail of up to 3 years. Caning, a fine. Therefore, between now and your court trial, you will need to systematically maintain and nurture all the vital aspects of your life while preparing to be at your strongest emotionally, mentally, and physically for the court trial. Now, by laying out all these aspects before you, I reduce the crippling uncertainty to tasks that are much more manageable. At any time you feel paralyzed, confused, or lost, just come back to this lesson and see what you've been missing out. Got it? So first, let me get this out of the way. Getting a lawyer. Navigating the courts is like surgery. You can read up on it and watch all the instructional videos you want, but when it's your life at stake, it isn't wise to be the one trying to cut open your own body and fix the problems within. Likewise, when you are accused of any crime, anyone with an internet connection can read up the various laws in the Singapore Penal Code, but when you need to know how judges have decided on similar situations like yours in previous cases, that is when a lawyer comes in. As a rule of thumb, you can say that once the facts of the case are established, who did what, when, where, and why, the argument in court then becomes which of the past cases is most similar to your case right now in terms of details and principles, and therefore sets the precedent, the example of how the judge ought to rule on your case. And this is why an experienced lawyer is more valuable. He or she will have seen enough past cases and read of even more to be able to make a more compelling argument to the judge why the judge ought to rule in favor of his or her client. So, even though in Singapore, any practicing lawyer is in theory qualified to represent clients in all kinds of matters, in real life, many lawyers find a few areas at the most and get really good at them. Now, one thing you need to bear in mind when choosing a lawyer. In Singapore, we have an entire industry of lawyers and law firms that make a living just from handling the buying and selling of HDB flats alone. They may be able to help you in matters that are mainly procedural or admin work, making sure all the right boxes are ticked and all that. But they may not be your best bet when you're facing criminal charges and you need a lawyer experienced in court trials. Next, lawyers aren't correct all the time. Sometimes they err on the side of cowardice. One example I can give offhand: an old friend of mine married a foreign woman who later divorced him and took their daughter away from him, all the while living off the child support and maintenance that he paid. Recently, she came back to Singapore and had lawyers write to him demanding that he pay for child support the kind of sums that allow a Singaporean family to live in luxury. The implicit threat is that if he refused, they would bring the matter to court, waste his time and money on court matters and legal fees, and probably still get the judge to order him to pay her such sums anyway. The lawyer that he engaged took a $1,000 deposit to look at his case, then told him to just take the blow and pay her the money. Now, we looked at the matter in detail ourselves, and based on the circumstances, we guessed that she was only just bluffing, that her lawyers were not certain that they could win the case if the matter was brought to court. And she was just hoping to intimidate him into quick surrender because she had less to back up her threat than she pretended. Now, we were correct. He ignored the demands, and up to now, the lawyers still haven't carried out their threats yet. The point is not about how two non-lawyers can outguess her lawyers. It's about his lawyer telling him to roll over and play dead for his opponent. As I pointed out in the Wang Shu case in lesson 3, whenever you capitulate to the type of people who use intimidation and bullying to get their way, you are entirely at their mercy as to whether or not they keep their promises. Bear in mind, there are criminals who enjoy toying with their victims, and one thing that such sick people like to do is promise to let you off if you do something for them that actually makes you more vulnerable. Because of the fear and the bad situation they have already trapped you in, many victims just want to believe that offer, and it's not going to turn out well, believe me. Another side point about lawyers when it comes to civil disputes, not criminal cases, okay? Bear in mind that in civil cases, lawyers will say whatever their clients want them to say. If their clients were known already to be dishonest before, you may think you have an advantage, but you have to weigh the chance that your opponent has more money to spend taking you to court than you do. And do you have enough money to battle it out with this person? Your opponent will often be counting on you being too intimidated by the brazenness of the claims, of the lies, and the thought of your own legal expenses to call his or her bluff. You have to weigh all of these situations on a case-by-case basis. Areas of your life you need to maintain in order to be in the best state you possibly can be when going to trial. First, your physical health. Nutrition. Are you drinking enough water? Signs of long-term dehydration include headaches, being unable to focus or concentrate, passing darker urine than usual, tiredness or fatigue, muscle weakness and cramps, constipation, dry, flaky skin, altered kidney, heart, or digestive function. You can read up more of this on the link that's in the lesson notes. But for now, water is the most basic nutrient. Make sure you take in enough before long-term health problems set in. Are you eating enough fruits? You can read up on the benefits of eating more fruits at the link given in the lesson notes. But as a quick sum up, Fruits give you fiber, antioxidants, and other nutrients. Pineapple and papaya contain enzymes that help your body to digest meat. I myself take some fruit every day, and 2 or 3 times a week I eat only fruits for lunch. I mix and match 2 or 3 types of fruits for that and eat enough to make me full. Now, you work out for yourself what works best for your body and your lifestyle. Next, omega-3 and protein. I am a pianist, not a nutritionist, so I will spare you the lecture. Links with the details are in the lesson notes anyway. The important part you need to note: if you are deficient in these two groups of nutrients, this directly affects your physical, emotional, and mental condition. Some people, like me, neglect good nutrition when under pressure. You might escape the consequences of that for a short time, but the long, drawn-out season and intense demands of police investigation and a court trial will not let you get away with this. Feed your body with what you need to clear through this challenge. Exercise. You need fitness, stamina, and strength. In lesson 4, when I spoke about waiting in the lockup and when undergoing interrogation, I brought up asking for medical attention should you need it. Why? Because especially for interrogation, you need to be at your most alert. And if you're physically unwell or weak, that works against you. Regularly exercising helps you to draw on your reserves of energy and alertness when you most need it. But what kind of exercise is useful? Some people say you should aim for 10,000 steps a day, a gentle form of exercise for your long-term health. I don't think so. In lesson 4, I talked about the interrogation process when you're being questioned by the police as they are seriously thinking of arresting you. You have to speak calmly and clearly, not too fast, even as your heart is pounding. And let me tell you, that is not the most intense it can get. The police are looking out for weaknesses and loopholes in what you say, yes. But they know that even if they don't get the answers they want from you today, they can always question you again tomorrow, next week, next month, whatever. They know they can take their time with this. If this goes up to the courts, however, both the judge and the public prosecutor are looking out for your mistakes. Both are ready to call you out on them, and both want to get all this over and done with. The cross-examination will be long drawn, with extended pauses and silences. And when you are the center of attention, you can feel your heart racing relentlessly throughout. Simply put, by then, the physical demands on your body are not a stroll in the park. Do you think you can prepare your body for this just by strolling in the park? You prepare for intense situations by training with at least some intensity. Yes? Now, if you're new to all this, I recommend that you engage a personal trainer for at least 2 months and tell him that you need physical fitness and strength. He can plan out the process and guide you through it. Now, personally, I believe you don't need 30 minutes a day of jogging or an hour a day in the gym to be prepared. In the months before the false molest accusation took place, I was loaded with work and tired almost all the time. But I had 3 to 5 bodyweight exercises that I did almost every day. 6 to 10 minutes with intensity, and that's it, I was done, ready to get on with life. And believe me, that made a huge difference on the night of 19th of October 2020, when I needed my alertness for the interview with the Serious Sexual Crimes Branch. Heart beating away during questioning? Please, I was already used to that sensation. Those short but intense daily workouts also kept me from becoming weak and fat. Next, cut down on the bad stuff. Oftentimes, once I say this, people already know how this applies in their lives. But I'll just single out two things that I believe are important: smoking and drinking. Now, I am less concerned about the long term health effects of these than about the fact that they are often how many people try to deal with stress. I'm not saying that you need to totally eliminate them out of your life at that point, but I urge you to cut down. Sometimes people who have been arrested for a crime they did not commit experience panic attacks after. If you did not settle the situation immediately, conclusively show with your first statement that your accuser was committing a 182 against you, you will likely be facing a continual low-grade stress with occasional bouts of what feels like a panic attack. If smoking and alcohol are your main reactions to stress, you might increase your smoking and drinking to the point they cause immediate damage to your health. Also, they might affect your mental alertness and focus. Can you imagine facing police interrogation or cross-examination in court when the nicotine cravings hit? Or if you're hungover from too much alcohol the night before? In lesson 4, I talked about using techniques like the Huberman physiological sigh to deal with intense anxiety, such as panic attacks, if you have been arrested and are waiting in the lockup. Get good at your preferred techniques because they are also useful in your day-to-day life after the experience. If you're not having a panic attack yet, but can sense you're heading that direction, I suggest that you drink some water, do 20 push-ups, and see if that makes you feel better. Now, obviously, there are top-notch lawyers and high-ranking police officers who drink and smoke to cope with stress. Yes, it doesn't affect their performance at work, so they can get away with it. But you must remember, they are a lot more familiar with the courts and with the trial process than you are. If you do not have their experience with the courts, I urge you to play it safe and err on the side of caution instead. Drink water, exercise, and go walk at the beach to manage your emotions. Okay? Next, work. You have to keep on working. You cannot let the shock and anxiety created by the false accusations to freeze you from working. Here are a few scenarios. Number one, if the 182 was committed against you outside of work. For example, you had an affair with a married woman that you met at your sailing club or country club, and she falsely accused you of molesting her, or worse, when her husband found out about the affair. Now, in this situation, it is distressing, but it does not directly affect your work. Therefore, you should compartmentalize your emotions over this and focus on work during work time. If you find it hard to focus, drink some water, do 20 push-ups, and then get back to work. Now, if the 182 was committed against you at work, however, it's a tricky situation. My recommendation is that you do not resign from your job, because if you resign, it is easy for inertia to set in, and you spend your days aimless and lost without the structure and framework of your job. Put the decision in the hands of the HR department of your workplace. In the case of Nurshafika Jasmi, the colleague she accused was asked to take a 2-week leave from work to prevent interaction between him and Nurshafika. He was banned from returning to Choa Chu Kang Neighborhood Police Center and carrying arms. He was posted to a back-end role at the Jurong Division Headquarters Support and Technical Branch instead. Now, because he was working in the public sector, they had some leeway in how they could reassign the guy during the investigations. If you're working in the private sector, things get complicated. Now, it is not illegal for employers to fire employees facing charges even before they are convicted. This opens up a whole can of worms if it goes that way. So I say, stay unless you're forced to go. However, if your accuser is your employer, then things are different. Leave immediately. If she still tries to retain you, of course, that tells the police that she knows you're innocent. Leave. Because the only thing more dangerous than associating with a 182 woman in any way is associating with her after she knows that you see through her. I highly recommend getting your lawyers involved with the resignation process if you can afford it. Being able to afford lawyers gives you more options, whatever the circumstances. That is why you must keep on working if your income depends on it. In the case of Dr. Yosonam, his legal fees went up to $600,000. I'm not saying that you need that kind of sum in order to have a chance in court. But you need to know how expensive things can get. Don't let the legal fees from going to trial become a bomb that explodes in your face while you're struggling to make ends meet. Keep working. When it comes to managing the damage and consequences of being falsely accused of molest, one of the best examples we can find in Singapore is from Dr. Yoso Nam. While in the midst of preparing legal representations and meeting his lawyers every few weeks, he pressed on with making key contributions to the field. In 2019, he started the chapter of pain medicine physicians at the Academy of Medicine and co-chaired a committee which assisted the Ministry of Health in publishing the national guidelines on opioid use in 2020. Notice how Dr. Yeo continued to keep himself busy with his career, his field of study, and serve in a committee within his field. You may not be as preeminent in your career as he is, but there are always things you can do, improvements you can make, and new ground you can break. Don't let a 182 woman stall you in your career. Again, sometimes your emotions can start to arise when you need to focus on work and get things done. If you can compartmentalize, carry on, and accomplish your daily goals, in spite of the anger and fear raging within you, congratulations. If you're not that good at compartmentalizing, however, here's a suggestion. Every time your fear and anger rise up and hinder you from focusing on your work, drink some water, do 20 push-ups, and then get back to your job. Your family. It is easy to get caught up with the trauma and shock. However, your family still needs you. Don't let your anger over the false accusation and the oppression of the investigations blind you to the needs still before you. This is the nightmare scenario. Your wife and kids see you leaving for work one day normally. Then you go missing, uncontactable for hours past the time they usually expect you home. Then when they finally see you home, you're haunted, silent, and withdrawn. Your wife tells your kids, "Daddy is just tired, let him rest." But the next day and the day after that, they still see you sitting sullenly at home. Or you go out and they see you staggering back late at night, reeking of cheap beer. Maybe you used to engage with them, chatting with your wife about her day and playing with your kids. Now the only time you speak to them is to curse, swear, and upbraid them over niggling trivialities. Your kids are distressed. What happened to Daddy, their strong, loving, dependable pillar of support? If your kids are too young to understand what is happening, there's a chance they end up blaming themselves for whatever is happening in the family. And this will permanently scar them in their souls. Your wife will try to be there for them, to make sure they do not feel neglected by your emotional distance. But she herself needs to know that you will not be down forever, that you will eventually pick yourself up and take up your role as husband and parent again. And every day that your depression and silence continues, you're bleeding her of her strength and hope. As an ideal for how to engage your family even during such adverse situations, we look at Dr. Yoso Nam again. This is from the same article I quoted earlier. And it says, during the 4 long years, he and his wife would go for long walks almost daily at the Botanic Gardens, meditating on Psalm 23 and 91 that assured them of God's comfort and protection. They would also praise God with the verses in Psalm 25 and 103 and use them whenever they needed guidance in walking the right path. Every night, he also tuned in to audio sermons before he slept. It was not easy because we also had to talk to our children about learning to ignore the harsh comments from social media or people around them. It was a dark time. Notice how he kept the communications with his wife open. They also headed off any problems they anticipated their children having. The very fact that he and his wife were proactive in this makes a huge difference in how well their children handle the adversities. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to engage with your children and invest into their lives during this season. Let's face it, a 182 woman can take your career out of your hands. She can use the Singapore police force and the courts to make your life miserable. She can ruin your reputation and turn society at large against you. You can feel that you've lost control over much of your life. But one area you still have some control over, your relationship with your children. That is pretty much a blank slate. Your kids want to have the best relationship with you possible, and that means you hold a lot of power in this one area of your life. As long as you have the opportunity, you should father your children to the best of your ability. There's a Jewish proverb that says, "Be wise, my son, and bring joy to my heart. Then I can answer anyone who treats me with contempt." When the police view you with suspicion and your professional and personal reputation is under attack, all you need is one child walking in wisdom for his or her life, and that brings dignity, comfort, and strength to your heart. On the other hand, I am certain that 182 women and those who trend toward dishonesty will never be good parents. Odds are they'll just gaslight their own children and abuse them emotionally in a wide range of ways. I suspect the best way such people can keep themselves from screwing up their children's lives, just don't have any. 182 women, either you grow up, face up to your crimes, and take responsibility for your misdeeds, or realize that you're not fit to breed. Just don't have children in the first place. Because if you do, I honestly pity your children. Okay, let's backtrack and look at the triggers for false molest accusations. Fundamentally, those who trend towards dishonesty use deceit in its various forms, such as lies, silence, Python talk, as a coping mechanism to deal with situations they don't like. Such coping mechanisms are quite ingrained into them by adulthood. So by the time they reach their 40s, say 44 years old or so, only a massive shock has a chance of getting them to change their ways. A shock such as being caught, exposed, and getting jailed for the 182. But this means, at this critical juncture, they have to overcome their own coping mechanism of the past 2, 3, 4 decades and choose honesty and responsibility. The odds of that happening are very low. Much more likely they will revert back to form, play the victim, and darvel away frantically. If they have enough money for lawyers, they will not only use their lawyers to defend against the official charges, which may not occur at all if clementi division is involved, but also to silence any whistleblowers who warn the public of the danger that they pose to society. And that is why I just write off such people. In lesson 5, I say 182 women are worth less than a dog with ticks. By the time they are exposed, the deep dishonesty is an integral part of their character. How good a parent can they be? Now, fathers, if you never gave much conscious thought to how you want to father your children, You can start by reading that article on parenting. The link is given in the notes. Important, you should never let the fear and frustrations of the season lead to any outburst towards your family. Never. You should, however, use your responsibility to your family to spur yourself on, to manage your emotions, and set an example to your children on how to handle difficult times and trying seasons. Here's a suggestion. Every time you sense the fear and anger rise up and tempt you towards an uncontrolled outburst towards your family, drink some water, do 20 push-ups, and then get back to your family. Religious faith. I would be remiss if I did not point out how much religious faith helped sustain Dr. Yeo and his wife during the trial, literally. Religious faith reminds us that fundamentally people haven't really changed. Thus, the struggles, temptations, and troubles we all face in life are what others have faced before and survived. One of the most crippling mindsets during seasons of adversity is the sense of loneliness, that only you are going through all this crap while everyone else is fine. Religious faith is one way to counter this mindset. Another thing that religious faith does is to give us a framework for self-reflection. In lesson 3, I spoke about awareness and self-reflection, but then I was looking more at the actions of other people. We also need to practice self-reflection to see what we are doing wrong, or what aspects of our lives make us more vulnerable to things going wrong. And when things go that far wrong, you are the target of a 182. There will always be some part you yourself played in how crappy things became. Now, some people take this too far and end up victim blaming. Let me give you a simple rule of thumb to help you discern between taking responsibility and victim blaming. Victim blaming tries to get the victim to not take official action against the culprit. The core idea is you had a part to play in this also, therefore you should not report that criminal to the police. Anyone who tries to feed you that type of idea is seeking to cover up for criminal activity. Either they themselves have a direct stake in the matter, for example, a man trying to get his wife off the hook for falsely accusing another man of molest, or they themselves were too cowardly to take action when they were abused or victimized. Therefore, you yourself taking action is a rebuke to them. Now, how much regard should you give to such people? I think you know my answer. My point is not to sell you a religious faith or to suggest that atheists take up a religion. No. But if you are already a religious person, don't neglect this area of your life. If you were already attending church, for example, don't drop out of church now. That would be unwise. Give your religious community a chance to practice their religion and be a help to you in your season of crisis. Next, community. A religious faith could also bring about a sense of community. But since that does not automatically happen, we need to look at it separately. Now, what is real functional community? It is a group of people who can say to you stuff like, bro, the way you're treating your wife is not good. And you are willing to listen. It is made out of people to whom you can say the same kind of thing and they are willing to listen to you. Community is built upon people who connect with each other and invest in each other. They know you and you know them. After I was falsely accused of molest, it was my community that linked me up with people who taught me stuff that I did not know. If you look at what I'm teaching here, and you realize that there's a lot of information here that I myself would not know or get from Google, the credit goes to my community. Now, when Dr. Yoso Nam was falsely accused of molest, there were still people who stood by him, such as his patients and his loved ones. If your reputation matters to you, such people who stand by you are a huge comfort during this season. Now, generally, I don't bother about my personal reputation. My reputation isn't so odious that strangers threaten me or attack me at random. And I'm respected enough to still make a living with what I do. My accuser has no clout in the Singapore nightclub scene, so she cannot keep me from getting work there. Likewise with other communities that matter to me. So I don't really care about my reputation among the general public or people who do not know me. First, I'm a loner. That's how I can get the skills and knowledge that I'm proud of. Second, I'm not running for political office. Neither am I trying to gain clout as a business leader or social media influencer of some sort. No. But I do care about my reputation with people I have connected with. In other words, my community matters to me. And I show that through my time and attention to people from my community. I invest effort into nurturing and mentoring newer people in my community, for example. It used to be that people would find community in their religious faith, but that is no longer a given in this day and age. If, like Dr. Yo, you attend New Creation Church, for example, odds are you have no community there. The church is too large, and many of the members do not connect with each other deeply outside the church service. And the same applies if you regularly go to Chinese temples. Do you know where community is found there? It is in the temples that regularly organize events, such as charity fundraising. It is in volunteering to serve in such temple communities that you plug yourself into community in their environment. So if you regularly go to temples, this is something you should give serious thought to. Preparing yourself mentally for your case. There are 3 things you should do. Number 1, you should study. At the very least, you should know the penal code on section 354, outrage of modesty, and 182, providing false information to a public servant. Then you look into past cases of convictions for both of them. For example, on 16th of February 2021, an officer from Clementi Division claimed that there would be no investigation into the 182 committed against me because I was not arrested for it. Well, do you know in which case the police took action against someone making a false accusation of sex crimes, even though the accused was not arrested? After that, you should study any aspect of the case that captures your attention. For example, for me, I already had a good enough understanding of criminal behavior, but I wanted to see how it came out in the Singapore context and in cases of 182. Clementi Division deliberately lying to cover up for my accuser sparked my interest in studying the Singapore police force and past cases of police dishonesty. When I study seriously. When I wanted to know about toxic people, psychopathy, and criminal behavior, I went to the library and dug through textbooks on these topics. And ever since, I've come across people who think they know as much as I do because they follow social media accounts on such topics. Okay, let me set the record straight. Textbooks give bibliographies and the references, the sources for their claims. Basically, they tell you where they get their conclusions from and give you the chance to look into them and see if they came to the correct conclusions and interpretations. The social media accounts I've seen do not give their references, sources, or citations. In other words, you have to take their word for it that their conclusions on these matters are correct. When the stakes are high, for example, they claim to help you protect your children from predators, their best guess isn't good enough when there is a lot of established information available. Study properly. Next, journal. Write out the details of your case, your memories of what happened before, the questions that you have, the emotions you experience, the details you remember, and the conclusions you come to. Write out the details of interesting cases that you have read, the questions that you have, and the conclusions you arrive at. In your day-to-day life, journaling helps you practice self-reflection. That, of course, is a great benefit in and of itself. But when you face this season of crisis and you need your mind to be sharper, physically writing out your journal forces your mind to be clear and exact with your choice of words. Over time, you start to do so instinctively. I've been journaling since 2007, 2008, up to this day. Can you tell? You need to practice speaking. If you're not experienced in public speaking, get out your phone audio recording app and record yourself reading out section 354 and 182 of the Singapore Penal Code. Read out the news articles on the various 354 and 182 cases. Read out your journal entries. Listen to how you sound and fix unclear words, lazy pronunciation, and any problems with your phrasing. You don't have to get to Toastmasters level, though I recommend joining Toastmasters if you are very new to all this. But you need to be sure you won't stumble over your words when you're being cross-examined in court. I'm a musician. How do I prepare for stuff? I practice, practice, practice. On 19th of October 2020, when I was falsely accused of molest, I was able to handle police questioning well enough to avoid arrest. The 3 points I gave here are a huge part of what helped. Emotionally, fortifying your emotions during this season. Now, what emotions often arise? A sense of being lost and directionless. Well, if you experience that, review this lesson again and again, as often as you need to remind yourself of what you need to do next. Loneliness. Well, that's why you need to be present. Be there with your family, for your family, as well as be part of a community. Invest in the lives of other people and let them invest in your life too. Fear, stress, a sense of powerlessness. You begin to manage these emotions when you study and understand better the situation that you face. My entire series of lessons helps you get started in this area. Of course, there will be times when the emotions still surge and you find yourself unable to regain control. Well, here's a suggestion. Every time these emotions threaten to overwhelm you or paralyze you, drink some water, do 20 push-ups, and then get back to your life. Anger and outrage over being the target of a vicious crime. Dealing with anger is simple. Anger exists as an emotional spur to take action to seek justice. If you refuse to report the 182 woman who tried to ruin your life, there is no reason for your anger to go away. And after some time, it's likely that your anger will not be directed only at the 182 woman, but also at yourself for not having the courage to stand up for yourself and strive for justice. So, compile the evidence, make the report, do what you need to do in order for the case against the 182 woman to have the best chance of success. If necessary, refer to lesson 5. Now, what if you are actively pursuing all the avenues to seek justice, and in the process, the anger rises up to the point you are unable to focus on what you need to do next, or you have done everything you could and can only just wait for the next breakthrough? Here's a suggestion. Every time the anger threatens to choke you up, drink some water, do 20 push-ups, and then get back to your life. I think you can see that I have a very simple way of managing negative emotions. Sunlight and nature. Signs you may need more sunlight. You have irregular sleep-wake cycles. You have low energy and productivity. You have depression and other mental illness. You have weaker bones or weakened immune system. There's weight gain or high blood pressure. Go get more sunlight. You get out in nature. Be deliberate to go to the park, walk through Bedok Reservoir, stroll through botanic gardens. Singapore is small. You are a short distance away from allowing a boost of nature to drastically make your day or week better. The benefits of being out in nature are too many to list here in this lesson. So, over in my lesson notes, there's a link to an article on the topic. Go read it out, okay? Conclusion. The whole entire process of being investigated and then facing trial is an ordeal. It can hit people hard. An article in channelnewsasia.com says, while the law declares that one is innocent until found guilty, accused persons often find the presumption of guilt hanging like a sword of Damocles over their heads even before they are convicted. Once court proceedings start, they risk being fired from their jobs or having to suffer the embarrassment of having their cases being reported in the media, say lawyers and human resource experts. In fact, some end up suffering so much stress and anxiety that they develop psychiatric issues, requiring counseling and medication, said Mr. Kalidas Nurugayam and Mr. Chua Hock Lu from Kalidas Law Corporation in an email response. They added, the stress suffered can be extraordinary. One of Mr. Kalidas' clients passed away shortly after court proceedings began. All this is part and parcel of what a 182 woman can inflict upon you. And not everyone has money to afford counseling during the process. Not everyone has a community or are connected with their religious leaders well enough for the religious leaders to be able to help them. And not all religious leaders are aware of the various aspects of what you go through if falsely accused of molest or other sex crimes. This lesson is to give those of us who do not have the understanding or resources some hope, some options, and some direction to head towards. My entire lesson series is also to help lay people, leaders of religious communities, for example, to get a sense of what you're facing and how they can best support you. So, takeaways. Now, what I want you to realize from this lesson, you do not need to be facing investigation and trial for this lesson to help you improve your life overall. I also want you to realize that prevention still gives you the best odds. Lesson 2 in this series is not a pleasant lesson, but in my opinion, it is the most crucial lesson in this series. Please go back to that lesson and maybe even use that lesson as a spur to your further study on dishonest people. If you can quickly identify 182 women and Davoian people early and you avoid them, this just makes things so much simpler for yourself. And with this, my most important thoughts, suggestions, and advice on the whole subject of preventing and responding to false accusations of sex crimes is out there. It's now before you. As you can see by now, I have held nothing back. I have not tried to upsell any special secrets you need in order to do XYZ or available now at a special discount rate of whatever. No. Maybe in the future, I may explore subtopics or further questions with experts I collaborate with, but for now, this is it. So thank you for joining me in these lessons. If you have found my lessons helpful, please share with friends, family, community, and such. If you have expertise in related fields and you'd like to share it, email me and we see what we can work out. If there's more you'd like to know about, let me know and I see if I can help. All right? So I see you when I see you. Thank you.